The silence in a small Ohio town is not the absence of sound, but rather the presence of something waiting. I have been a police officer in Oak Haven for 12 years, and in that time, you learn to distinguish the noises that belong to the night. There is the wind through the cornstalks, the occasional skittering of raccoons against a trash bin, and the low, distant rumble of a tractor struggling to stay alive until sunrise. But there are other sounds, the ones that make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, the ones that suggest the town itself is holding its breath. I thought I knew every corner of this jurisdiction, every broken fence, every flickering streetlight, and every resident who lived on the edge of reason. I was wrong. I was never meant to see what was hidden beneath the floorboards of the old Miller estate, a place that local legend had long ago dismissed as nothing more than a rotting eyesore. It was a Tuesday in late October, the kind of night where the air feels thick, damp, and cold enough to penetrate the thickest wool lining of my uniform jacket. I was patrolling the northern quadrant near the county line when the radio crackled with a static heavy dispatch that didn't sound right. Dispatcher Sarah called out a welfare check on the property at 402 Blackwood Lane. It was a routine procedure, or so I told myself, but the address sent a jolt of hesitation through my chest. The Miller property had been abandoned for 20 years, ever since the patriarch, Elias Miller, vanished under circumstances that the department preferred to leave in the dust of history. I pulled my cruiser into the gravel driveway, the crunching stone sounding like gunfire in the absolute stillness of the night. My high beams cut through the gloom, illuminating a colonial-style house that looked as if it were sinking into the earth, its porch sagging like a tired shoulder. I stepped out, my boots heavy on the wet ground, and unholstered my flashlight. The light beam was a defiant needle in the dark. The front door was not locked, which usually meant I was walking into a squatter situation or a stray animal infestation. I pushed the door open, and the smell hit me first. It was not the scent of mildew or damp wood, but something metallic and sharp, reminiscent of copper pennies and stagnant water. As I crossed the threshold, the floorboards groaned under my weight, a protest that echoed through the empty hallway. I called out, my voice sounding thin and small against the vast, oppressive darkness of the house. There was no answer, only the sound of my own rhythmic breathing. I moved deeper into the house, checking the living room, the kitchen, and the small office where Elias Miller had reportedly spent his final days. Everything was covered in a thick, uniform layer of dust, undisturbed for decades. Yet, as I stood in the kitchen, I noticed a single, pristine chair pushed neatly against the table. It was perfectly centered, as if someone had just sat down to wait for me. I checked the upstairs rooms, finding nothing but shadows and the peeling remnants of wallpaper that looked like flaking skin. The house felt immense, a maze of forgotten memories and heavy secrets. It was as I was heading back to the ground floor that I heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from somewhere below. It wasn't the sound of pipes settling or the wind rattling a loose shutter. It was deliberate, slow, and insistent. I followed the sound toward the pantry, where a heavy, iron-latched door led to the cellar. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the cold handle. You have to understand, in a town like this, you develop a sixth sense for when you are being watched, and the sensation radiating from the cellar door was cold, clinical, and profoundly hungry. I pulled the door open, and the smell of copper intensified, becoming thick enough to taste on the back of my tongue. I began to descend the wooden stairs, my flashlight beam trembling only slightly. The stairs were narrow and steep, the wood slick with a mysterious, viscous moisture. At the bottom, I found myself in a basement that defied the architecture of the house above. It was deeper than it had any right to be, the walls lined with rough-hewn stone that looked almost obsidian in the light. In the center of the room, there was a heavy wooden table, and on it, a series of intricately carved stone tablets that seemed to pulse with a low, sub-audible vibration. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I knew then that this was not a welfare check. This was an invitation to something that had existed in Oak Haven long before the town was ever mapped. If you find yourself intrigued by the darker, unseen corners of our world, or if you simply enjoy stories that linger in the shadows of your mind long after the screen goes dark, then consider subscribing to this channel. Staying connected with us ensures you never miss a journey into the inexplicable, as we continue to document the mysteries that the official reports refuse to acknowledge. Your support helps us keep the light focused on these hidden truths. Looking back at those stone tablets, I could see markings that were not letters, but shapes that hurt my eyes if I stared at them for too long. They were shifting under the beam of my light, swirling like ink in water. I reached out to touch one, compelled by a force that felt like gravity pulling at my very soul. Just before my fingertips made contact, the air in the room dropped in temperature so sharply that my breath turned into a fine mist. The tapping returned, louder now, coming from the very walls themselves. I realized then that the basement was not just a storage room, it was a containment unit. Elias Miller hadn't vanished. He had been absorbed into the architecture of his own home. I turned around, intending to bolt up the stairs, but the stairs were gone. There was only a smooth, unbroken wall of obsidian stone. I spun back toward the table, my flashlight beam frantic and shaking. The shadows in the corners of the basement were lengthening, detaching themselves from the stone walls. They didn't have faces, but they had presence, a weight of existence that was older than the soil of Ohio. They weren't ghosts. They were the guardians of the space, ancient things tied to the ground beneath my feet. I stood there, paralyzed, watching as the light of my flashlight began to fade, not because the batteries were dying, but because the darkness was consuming the illumination. It was eating the light, piece by piece. I pressed my back against the cold stone, trying to find a seam, a crack, anything. I screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the room, muffled as if I were underwater. Then the center of the room began to glow, a dull, sickly amber light emanating from the stone tablets. A message began to form in my mind, not in words, but in images. I saw Oak Haven as it was when the land was untamed, and I saw the people who had built the original foundations. They were not human, at least not in the way we define it. They were architects of the void, and they had left pieces of themselves behind, buried beneath the houses and the streets, waiting for someone to find the frequency required to wake them. I saw myself, an officer of the law, a man sworn to protect, serving as the final key to a lock that had been rusting for centuries. The pressure in my head became unbearable, a searing pain that felt like needles piercing my temples. I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to surrender to the overwhelming, crushing weight of the ancient entities. I remembered my badge, the weight of the metal against my chest, the oath I took to serve the living. That simple thought, that mundane fragment of my professional life, acted like an anchor. I pushed against the wall, not with my hands, but with every ounce of willpower I possessed. I focused on the sound of the wind outside, the distant rumble of the tractor, the reality of the world I knew. The obsidian wall rippled, and for a fleeting second, I saw the wooden stairs reappear, shimmering like a mirage. I didn't hesitate. I lunged toward them, my fingers clawing at the wood as I scrambled upward. I didn't look back. I didn't care what was clawing at the heels of my boots, or what cold, spindly fingers were reaching for my uniform jacket. I hit the pantry floor with a thud and didn't stop until I had scrambled out the front door and into the cool, damp Ohio night. I collapsed on the porch, gasping for air, the silence of the night returning to greet me as if nothing had happened. The house stood exactly as it had before, silent, decaying, and utterly unremarkable. I stood up, my legs shaking, and retreated to my cruiser. I didn't report the incident to dispatcher Sarah. I didn't write a report. I didn't even mention the welfare check. I drove away, back toward the main road, the lights of Oak Haven appearing on the horizon like a beacon of sanity. But I know what is down there. I know that whenever I drive past that house on my night shifts, the air grows colder, and the radio static settles into a rhythm that mimics the tapping I heard in the dark. The Miller estate is still there, rotting away, but it is no longer just a house. It is a vessel, a silent sentinel, watching over our town. I am a cop in a small town in Ohio, and I have learned that some secrets are not meant to be uncovered, and some doors are kept locked for a reason. I still carry the same badge, and I still walk the same streets, but Now I walk them with the knowledge that beneath the surface of the normal, mundane world, there is a pulse that never sleeps. I wonder if the people I pass on the street know what lies beneath their feet. I wonder if they ever hear the tapping when the wind dies down. I think they do, but like me, they are afraid to look. They are afraid to acknowledge the shadows that move just outside their peripheral vision. The mystery of the Miller basement haunts my dreams, a constant, low-frequency hum in the back of my consciousness. Sometimes I find myself driving back to the property, sitting in my cruiser at the edge of the driveway, watching the house in the dark. I never go inside again, of course. I know better now. But I also know that one day, someone else will come along. Someone who doesn't know the rules. Someone who will open that pantry door and descend those stairs. I find myself wondering if I should have burned the house to the ground, or if that would have only released whatever was trapped inside. The uncertainty is the worst part. The knowing that the containment is fragile and that my own survival was perhaps just a temporary delay in an inevitable awakening. My shift ends at 4 in the morning. That is the darkest hour, the time when the veil between what is and what could be feels thinnest. I sit in the precinct, filling out paperwork for minor disturbances, for noise complaints, for the mundane, everyday life of a town that believes it is safe. My colleagues drink their coffee and talk about the upcoming weekend, oblivious to the fact that their reality is draped over a foundation of ancient, hungry stone. I sip my own coffee, feeling the heat of the cup against my palms, trying to ground myself in the physical world. I wonder if the others have seen things they don't talk about. I wonder if the silence in their eyes is the same silence I carry in mine. We are a town of secrets, a town built on top of a tomb, and we all play our parts in keeping the truth buried. Sometimes, I think about the stone tablets. I think about the way they pulsed. I wonder if they are still pulsing right now, in the dark, waiting for someone to listen. I wonder if the guardians ever leave the basement, if they walk the streets of Oak Haven at night, looking for a way to fully manifest in this world. There are times when I see shadows that don't match the objects casting them, and I have to remind myself that it is just light, just reflections, just the tired mind of a man on the graveyard shift. But deep down, I know that the shadows are watching. I know that the town is not just a collection of homes and people, but a living, breathing entity that chose this place for its own inscrutable reasons. I remember the feeling of the cold air, the way it moved against my skin like an invisible hand. It was a sensation of being weighed and measured, judged by something that didn't understand the concepts of law or order, but understood the concept of power. I have never been the same since that night. I check my surroundings more often, I listen to the silence with a heightened intensity, and I never, ever step into a basement without knowing exactly what is inside. The fear is always there, lurking, but it has been joined by a cold, sharp curiosity. I want to know more, but I am terrified of what the knowledge will cost. As the sun begins to rise, the sky turning a bruised purple over the horizon, the tension in my chest eases. The morning light is a sanctuary, a temporary reprieve from the darkness that stalks the night. I head home, the drive through the backroads of Ohio offering a familiar comfort. The cornfields are golden, the air is crisp, and for a few hours, the world feels normal again. I sleep, but the dreams always return. The tapping, the obsidian walls, the amber glow of the tablets. And in those dreams, I am always back at the top of the stairs, looking down into the abyss, wondering if I should have stayed. There are many stories told in Oak Haven. Most of them are small, domestic tales of petty thefts or local scandals. None of them involve the basement of the Miller estate. That is the one story that remains untold. The one secret that is mine alone to carry. I often wonder if there is anyone else out there who has seen the things I've seen, who has stood at the threshold of the unknown and chosen to turn back. I wonder if there is a brotherhood of the haunted, a collection of people who carry the weight of these encounters in silence. If there is, they are hidden well, buried beneath the surface of the same society that refuses to acknowledge the existence of the things that live in the dark. I have reached a point where I can no longer distinguish between my duty to the town and my need to understand the threat that looms in its foundations. The badge feels heavier every day. a symbol of a thin line that is fraying at the edges. I am a cop in a small town, and my job is to protect, to serve, and to keep the peace. But how do you protect a town from a darkness that is already woven into its very foundation? How do you keep the peace when the enemies are not people, but ancient, shifting shadows that thrive in the spaces between our thoughts? The mystery is not going away. It is growing, deepening, and waiting. Every time I get a call to the outskirts of town, every time I hear a sound I cannot explain, I feel the pull of the Miller estate. It is a siren song of terror, a reminder that the world is much older and much stranger than we are led to believe. I will continue to patrol these roads. I will continue to watch over Oak Haven, but I will do it with the understanding that my role has changed. I am no longer just a protector of the people. I am a guardian of the lock. And I pray every night that the lock holds. The end of the road is rarely what we expect. We look for answers, for closure, for a sense of justice that makes sense of the suffering. But in the life of a small-town cop, sometimes the only resolution is the ability to keep moving forward, even when you know there is a darkness behind you. The Miller estate remains, a silent witness to the history we have forgotten and the terrors we have yet to face. I drive past it every day, and I see the way the light dies around it, the way the ground seems to recoil from the house. It is a part of Oak Haven now, as much as the diner, the school, or the graveyard. It is a part of us. When I look in the mirror, I search for the man I was before the welfare check. I look for the innocence, the lack of fear, the simple belief that the world was a place that could be understood through reports and investigations. He is gone, replaced by someone who understands that we are merely guests in a world that belongs to something much older, something that has been waiting patiently for us to realize that we are never truly alone. The tapping has stopped for now, but I know it will return. It always returns. I leave the lights on in my house at night. It is a small gesture, a desperate attempt to keep the darkness at bay. I know it is futile, that the dark doesn't care about a flickering bulb or a locked door, but it makes me feel better. It gives me a sense of control, a sense that I still have a choice. We all have our ways of coping with the things we cannot explain, the things that keep us awake at night. Mine is to tell this story, to document the encounter, to make sure that if I ever disappear, someone will know what happened. Someone will know that I did my best to hold the line, to keep the peace, and to stand against the encroaching shadows. The story is not over, and I suspect it never will be. As long as there are people in Oak Haven, as long as there is ground for them to walk on and houses for them to live in, the dark will be there, waiting for the right moment to emerge. I will be here too, watching, listening, and hoping that I am strong enough to do what is necessary. It is a heavy burden, but it is one I have chosen. It is the life of a cop in a town that hides monsters, and I wouldn't have it any other way. The sun is dipping below the horizon again, painting the sky in shades of blood and ash. My shift starts in an hour, and I find myself preparing for the night, checking my gear, making sure my flashlight is charged, and steeling my nerves for whatever the darkness might bring. Tonight, I will drive carefully. I will avoid the northern quadrant. I will keep my windows rolled up and my eyes on the road. But I know that the road leads to the same place, and the dark is always waiting, just beyond the reach of my high beams, patient and eternal. I am a small-town cop in Ohio, and this is my reality. It is a world of mysteries, of things that go bump in the night, and of secrets that define the very fabric of our lives. It is a scary, uncertain, and deeply unsettling existence, but it is the only one I have. And as I step out into the evening air, I feel the familiar pull of the night, the call of the unknown, and the weight of the secrets I keep. I am ready, I am waiting, and I am watching for the day that the darkness finally decides to break the seal. Until then, I hold the line. I keep the secrets. And I hope, against all logic, that the morning light will always find me here, safe and sound, in the quiet town of Oak Haven. There are no conclusions in stories like this, only pauses. The narrative of my life has been irrevocably altered by the things I saw in that basement. I no longer see the world as a series of events, but as a thin veneer stretched over a reality that is far more complex and dangerous than anyone in this town dares to imagine. I wonder if the people I meet in the grocery store or the bank have similar stories, or if I am the only one who has been touched by the ancient, hungry things that dwell beneath the surface. I will keep my eyes open, I will keep my ears to the ground, and I will continue to tell this story for as long as I can, so that the truth is never truly lost. The night is calling, and I must answer. The patrol cruiser is waiting, its engine idling with a steady, comforting rhythm. I know what lies out there, in the dark, in the abandoned houses, and in the quiet, empty streets. I know the rhythm of the town, the pulse of the earth, and the secrets that lie beneath the floorboards. I am ready to face the night, whatever it may bring, and whatever ghosts may arise from the shadows to test my resolve. I am a cop in Oakhaven, and I am the guardian of the secrets that sleep in the dark. The darkness is not an end, but a beginning. It is a space where the possible becomes the inevitable, and where the boundaries of our reality are tested. I have walked the line, I have seen into the void, and I have returned. I am a different man than I was before, tempered by the terror and forged in the truth of what lies beneath. I will continue to serve, to protect, and to watch. For as long as there is light, I will be here, and for as long as there is darkness, I will be ready. This is my story, and this is the life I lead as a cop in a town that never forgets and never lets you go. If you have enjoyed this look into the shadows, remember that the world is filled with stories like mine, waiting to be heard and waiting to be understood. We are all living on the edge of the unknown, and it is only by sharing our experiences that we can begin to comprehend the depths of the mysteries that surround us. Keep your eyes open, stay vigilant, and remember that when you hear the tapping in the dark, it might just be the world trying to tell you something you were never meant to hear. Stay safe out there, and never assume that the silence is empty. The duty calls, and the time for reflection has passed. I am stepping out into the night once more, a single light moving through an ocean of darkness. I am a small-town cop, and I am ready for whatever the night has in store. The legacy of Oakhaven is mine to guard, and the secrets of the Miller estate are mine to keep. I will walk these streets until they are empty, and I will stand my ground until the very end. The shadows may be waiting, but so am I. And I am not going anywhere. The final lesson I have learned is that fear is just a signal, a way for our instincts to tell us that we are close to the truth. And in a place like this, the truth is always hiding in the dark, waiting for someone to be brave enough to look. I have looked, and I have survived. Now I must live with the knowledge of what is really out there, and I must continue to do my job, regardless of the terror that sits in the back of my mind. The night is long, but I am here, and I am waiting. And that is all that matters. The story is mine, and it will remain mine until the day I am gone. I am a small-town cop in Ohio, and I was never supposed to see what was in that basement. But I did. And now, I am the one who knows. I am the one who remembers. And I am the one who will continue to watch, long after everyone else has gone to sleep. Oakhaven is safe for now, and I am the reason why.